Yeah, probably earlier, maybe like 3:30.
Oh man, that's like dead of the night, like proper. Although
Yeah,
some
it's
people
just,
wake up at that time, according to the internet.
I was thinking about those people. And it's just like, I just, I've never gravitated to getting up at that early consistently.
Not that early. I
Yeah.
have in the past done a bit of super early mornings just to
Mm.
see what it's like. To be honest, like at university, I actually did like a whole month of getting up at 4:30 a.m.
How was that?
It was like surreal, to be fair. It was like a really weird, because I also wasn't going to bed that early, so I was just like
Yeah.
not sleeping enough and
Yeah.
being very, hardcore about it. And the one thing I did like was the solidarity of the morning. I mean, I don't think you'd get it as much here in London, but where I was up in Nottingham, and it was just
Yeah.
a sleepier time if you were up at 4:30. Like that's really early. Like no
I
one's around
love
then.
how much like you can get done before 7 a.m. though. Like if
Yeah,
you
and
when you're in
I
that
had this
zone.
whole thing. Yeah, I had this whole thing. I'd get up and then I would straight away exercise. So I'd go on this run and I'd do a loop of I'd go to the campus. I'd do this loop of the campus, and all around the campus were these like gym apparatus, outdoor gym apparatus, and I'd do like pull-ups and press-ups and stuff at each one. And then I'd come really all the way around, come back. I would have done maybe 6 or 7 miles with like
Pull-ups,
upper body
yeah.
stuff.
So
So it was
good.
a proper workout. And then I was back at like 6:30, and then I would write for about 2 hours. I'd have my breakfast and write, and I had a rule that I wouldn't have caffeine until 9. And I remember I got so much done before 9 a.m.,
Yeah.
which felt great and everything. But then obviously sort of later on in the day, you're just sort of fatiguing and you're not really being that productive. But
It's
it was
I
an
would always
interesting little self-experiment.
because when I lived in Gold Coast, it was kind of similar. It was just like all the run clubs started at 5:15, so you'd be up at 4:30,
Wow.
and then yeah, till midday or sometimes 11 a.m. Unbelievable, but it just 11 till 3, just crushed.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's
Well,
like I don't know if you can get up at 4:30 and go all the way through till like 8 p.m.
yeah, I mean, to be like, people give it a lot of stick because it is very strange. But at the same time, if you're looking to be hyper productive, then
Yeah.
I would argue the least disturbed time is
Early hours.
from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Yeah.
They're the least disturbed time. Whereas if you're trying to get a lot of your work done in the evening, people are up, you might be getting messages, you'll get notifications, all this sort of stuff. And so it kind of makes sense, like rather than doing like a 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. shift, do a 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift instead.
Yeah.
As long as you're
Yeah.
getting your sleep in and stuff. But yeah,
That's
it's
the
a
hard
funny
part.
one. These days as well, like, because I manage my own day, I'm way less disciplined with like getting up super quick and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so now I notice I only really start getting my gears going by about like 10 a.m. because I go for a run, I'm doing a little bit of journaling or like planning some content, stuff that doesn't feel like work, but it's kind of just interesting to me. And then before I know it, it's like 10:30 a.m. I haven't sat down and actually done any proper work, which is kind of nice.
We are so similar.
Yeah. Quick interruption of That's Notable to talk about today's sponsor. It is, of course, Innovate. I'm recording this right now from Madeira because on the weekend, in a couple of days, I'll be doing Madeira Island Ultra Trail, which is a 118-kilometer race across Madeira Island. And I'm wearing... What shoes am I wearing? I'm wearing the Trailflies Max. So I'm in love with Innovate's Trailflies. The originals are well loved by many, but I do just want that little bit more support and cushioning on the really long distance races. I've worn a more minimal shoe before on a race that was over 100 kilometers, and it wreaked havoc. It made it very uncomfortable, and so I just wanted that little bit more cushioning, a bit more support, a bit more of a stack height, and the Trailflies Max give me that. And let me tell you, they are everything you'd expect. If you love the trail flies, then you will absolutely love the max version, because it is just essentially like the trail flies, but just that bit more cushioning. It's a 6mm drop as well. I love them. I think they also look great. Even my mum told me she liked them when she saw them, and that's got to be saying something. So check out Innovate, 15% off if you use the code Runnable. The new Trail Flies Max are my latest recommendation. Big fan. Okay, back to the show. I'm dealing with a bit of drama on socials. Not really. It's just that
I was trying to. I did read that at
engage.
maybe at 4:30 a.m. this morning. Was this your something about being soft?
Yeah. It's just I just said like we're all trying to we don't want to be soft, and then I just went into kind of what, because I've written a newsletter that goes out today, basically talking about embracing discomfort and the value of that. And
I'd like the stop using the term toxic masculinity for anything that doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah, because the reality is that actually I'm intentionally using that language to appeal to a certain demographic within my audience. I think that actually the best communicators are the ones that sort of experiment with different ways to communicate. And I think some people, like if I was in the gym with someone, depending on the person I was in the gym with, I would use different types of encouragement. If I was in the gym with my girlfriend, I wouldn't be like, come on, don't be soft. Like, I wouldn't do it like that. I would sort of be a bit more encouraging. Whereas if I was in the gym with my mate, I would be aggressive in terms of like, come on, you've got this. Don't be soft. Don't let your thoughts take over. All this sort of stuff that is just, dig deep kind of language. And I think the tragedy that we have, to be honest, is that we link that language. We link the language of, calling certain characteristics soft, or talking about digging deep or building resilience, all that sort of stuff. We link that with this idea of toxic masculinity because the likes of Andrew Tate have used the word soft. But I will not let Andrew Tate take the word soft from me in that context. Soft is not a word that we should be scared to use, in my opinion. It's just,
I agree.
It's a word that I use to myself to encourage myself to push through. Am I being soft? Do I just need to, be a bit more stoic about this? Do I need to change the narrative? I think that people want to hear that sometimes. And so that's where the dramas come from. But I kind of, I've chosen to engage.
The battles of the internet week on week. Here we are.
Anyway, here we are then. Episode 2 of That's Notable. I've got Josh here with me. Josh Leinert, author of A Note to the Runners. We've decided to call it That's Notable. I think that was the best name that came out of the poll.
It's a great name.
Yeah, I think it's good.
One of my friends submitted Runway, which I didn't mind, but as soon as you came through with That's Notable, I was like, you got me.
Yeah, I think actually a couple of people suggested it. You had notable... Wait, what did you have again?
I had Runway. Someone said that.
And then there was another one which included notable runs? No, that sounds different. I don't know. Anyway, this was the one we went with. And I guess last month, I guess, was a bit of an experiment to just sort of chit chat, but we're going to try and apply a bit of structure to things and sort of update each other on what we're doing and how things are going. So I wanted to start by asking you how your training's going.
Training currently I'm actually feeling a little bit embarrassed by it, particularly because I'm around so many runners and everyone's just like, how's your training going? I'm just like barely running at the moment. I'm running about 20 to 30 Ks a week, and I had my biggest week this week and I ran 40K. And
nice, yeah.
Yeah, since I raced Tarawera in February, and since I did that, my knee, like right knee, patellar tendon has been pretty angry. And it's just like after that race, all my tendons were just like, dude, chill out. So I'm hoping it starts to tip over. But then I've kind of just embraced this period of time, just like treat it as an off season. Just don't put any pressure on yourself till May when I return back to Oz. And then when I get there, get back into the gym, routine, sleeping, Pilates, everything. And yeah, try and not feel guilty for living at the moment. So it's important. It's a bit of a shambles, but it is what it is.
It's important, man. I actually feel the same sometimes if I'm dealing with any sort of little injury or issue that I know full well is best dealt with first and foremost by dropping volume or training in a certain way. I will still look at my volume, and if it's like 30 or 40k for the week and I'm aiming for double that, for example, I'll look at that and be like, oh, I feel bad compared to everyone else. But the more and more I think about it, the more I'm like, actually, those who, if they knew what I was going through, they would be impressed at my discipline to not do more and to, you know, manage things as I am.
Yeah.
So I think
definitely.
there's always a bigger story. And actually, the full picture for you is that it is the wider story, right? It's everything you just said. The fact that it's not off season, all that.
Yeah, it's like I had my best friend's wedding last week in the Philippines, and we were island hopping, and instead I was just like, I'm just gonna swim around these islands, and if I get 30 or 40 minutes of swimming, that's my fitness for the day.
Nice.
So, how about you? How's your training feeling at the moment?
Good. I am just 2 weeks out from Madeira, which we'll talk about. Which we'll park and talk about.
I cannot wait to unpack Madeira.
Josh told me that he is a big fan of Madeira Island, so we are going to chat about the race that's coming up. And so what that means is I'm tapering at the moment. Usually, in the past, I've done 3-week tapers. Where
wow, I've never done one that long.
Yeah, so
I've over
actually
10 days.
So yeah, okay. So everyone around me has done shorter tapers, but I've really liked a very gradual decrease for 3 weeks before a big event. But that has been historically when I have achieved the weekly volume that I've wanted to for a good 4 or 5 weeks prior to that 3-week taper. So this time around, I haven't managed to do that because of various different reasons. Bashed my knee in Egypt, and then at the beginning of the year, and then I had shingles, and which stopped me from getting up to volume, and then I had another issue that stopped me getting up to volume. So I just have been kind of relying on the accumulation of these weeks and just managing my injuries and illnesses.
I think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I think it is.
You have to try and get there somewhat fresh.
Yeah, I think that's the priority. And it's been nice though this week I managed to do a decent week. There wasn't a huge long run in there, but still after Lone Wolf a couple of weeks ago, I'm still being careful about my tibialis posterior, which has a bit of an issue. So managed to get up to a decent volume this week and get almost 100k in.
So what is
which
it?
Was nice.
Okay, that was my question. And how much vert are you doing at the moment?
It's all. Well, not all. There will be times where I get some vert, but it's pretty much all in the gym, which is pretty difficult to measure. Like if you're looking at sort of my Strava data and stuff, like I'm not very on top of Strava. It links to my watch and then it just goes up. But I know how my legs feel. But I'm doing stair steppers, like 200 floors on the stair stepper and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. How do you like mentally approach a race with like Madeira, which has so much vertical gain and loss, when you're I'm gonna say like just relying on gym? I've really kind of wanted to test that theory, particularly now that I live in Melbourne, and be like, okay, I don't have the access to the mountains and the vert. Can I still be strong in the mountains if I'm just doing gym? Like, how do you kind of reconcile that mentally?
I've gone through different chapters with this. I think it's worth saying that nothing beats actually training on the trails. Nothing beats
Yep.
running hills to train for hills.
Mm-hmm.
You got to run on the mountains to train for the mountains. You got to run on the trails to train on the trails. All of that makes sense. But I also think that you can achieve a lot in the gym. Firstly, so you can do a lot of leg extension stuff to just strengthen the quads. The quads is where people just really struggle on the quads on the downhills.
They buckle, yeah.
And yes, you can. Yes, it's not perfect to do leg extensions, for example, but you can do leg extensions. You can go high resistance on a bike, an indoor bike, and you can really build decent strength in that area, which will pay dividends when you get to running the downhills. And then with the uphills, there is plenty you can do. Spending a huge amount of time, like per week, on a stair stepper is a great way to do things.
So you're doing, say, 100k a week of running, and then you've got your stair stepper volume separate
And
again.
then there's additional volume, which isn't measured really, but there's additional volume in the gym. Joe McConaughey, the string bean, probably the best through hiker in the world right now, one of. He spends a huge amount of time on his stair stepper, and
Amazing.
you know, there's evidence to say that it's a great low impact way to train for climbing.
Yeah,
And
I want to get one in my apartment.
yeah, I think it's a good one.
That's the goal.
And then incline treadmill, always great as well. And, you know, sometimes I will do a bit of I'll do like 25k and then I'll come back to the gym and I'll throw in an hour on the stair step, because that is basically a long run, including vert. But then the final thing I will say that I actually have more and more started to believe in is that if you have good form, if you really are working hard on how you run and your form and landing well and control and good proprioception, I think you will bode very well on technical terrain. I actually think that a lot of people underestimate the power of running with good control and having and just being very capable over technical terrain, and how much that can impact how well a race can go for you in the mountains. And I think that if you work on form outside of the trails, if you work on your form when you're running in London, if you, for example, run with more minimal shoes and you're landing in a way that makes sense, I do think that actually does a huge amount for how you perform on the trails in the mountains, and it does so for Tom Evans. So I think that there's a lot you can do, and you're not fucked if you are going to a 7,000 meter vert race and you haven't technically got as much vertical gain in your training. I think it's not out of this world to expect you to do well. And then, I mean, like, thirdly, evidence. Trans Gran Canaria is a 7,000 meter plus race, 126 kilometers. I managed to do it, you know, and be okay. I've got other races under my belt that are 5,000-6,000 meters of vert. This will be a very technical, very tough race, but I don't believe it's completely out of my wheelhouse. And I guess it's just about backing yourself at the end of the day eventually, and being humble when you approach the mountain.
Yeah, I back you in and want to take a lot of that on board when I get back to Oz.
Yeah, I wish I could train more in the mountains, man. I wish I could.
Yeah,
I'm not
podcast.
standing here trying to say, oh, it doesn't matter. It absolutely does matter. And my aim in life is to be closer to the mountains. But for the time being, I'm not going to not run mountain races because
look at Jim Walmsley
for.
Moving to France to train for UTMB. For me, I want to do that 1 year. Just a year in France, just day on day on day in the mountains. Just see what I can become.
Yeah. I always say this to Lou, if we had somewhere with nice weather and mountains, I'm always just like, I'd be so fit if we were here.
Yeah.
I'd be so
I say
fit.
the same thing. Maybe try and convince Lou to move to Madeira. It really is the
I don't
the
think
spot.
it'd be hard.
Man, if I could, I probably
Well,
would.
funnily enough, when Lou and I were sort of earlier on when we were sort of first dating, our first trip together was to Madeira. She spent like a month and a half there working, and I sort of visited for 2 weeks. And when I went there, this is 3 years ago, when I went there, I was like, there's got to be an ultra here, surely.
Yeah.
So here we are, prepping for
Epic. It may bode well for you, but I'm also sad for you because last year or maybe this year, anyway, they had the fire, so the course has changed dramatically. So I think you may be in for a little bit more road running than
Fair enough.
previous years. They kind of took out that like central section of the race, which is a real shame, but I guess they got to do it. But yeah, can't wait to follow along.
Yeah, I think it goes along the coast for a bit longer or something.
Yeah.
I think
that area is where I was
living. It goes up to the top, then back down to the coast. So
Your
that it can
first,
go back up again.
The start of the race is where you just have to completely look after yourself. Where it's 30k, 3,000 meters of elevation. It's like, that's a race in itself, and then it begins.
That's serious, man, isn't it? 1,000 meters per 10k is really proper climbing.
In the night as well, on like slippery, steep stairs. So that's going to be a real test of your proprioception.
Yeah. Talking of in the night, this will make sense, but we've decided that we want to do a bit of a show and tell section. So the loose idea of this will make sense why the link between the night.
I can't wait for the segue.
So the point of the show and tell is to sort of bring something to the chat, whether it's something physical or maybe something online that you found, something you want to share, basically.
You have to start because you've launched the segue.
Well, my show and tell is that I was looking at the kit list, the mandatory kit list for Madeira, and in true prep for an ultra fashion, I had to make some last minute purchases because I don't know, they're just always expecting a little bit more than what you have. I
actually need to start factoring this into budgeting for a race, because I'll enter and then it'll be like 2 weeks before I seem to drop like another $500 to $1,000 depending on the race.
Yeah,
and this it's just like, you need a head torch or a jacket or something else.
So this hasn't been too bad, but I always think, I need a, like you say, head torch, and that'll be fine. But apparently I need 2 head torches. I also need a back red light, which I've realised my new my Petzl Eco Core doesn't have a back headlight. My old I had a LED lenser which had like a backlight. Anyway, so I've bought like extra batteries and extra head torches. Anyway, my show and tell is this head torch that I used to have, right? And I bought it again because I lost the original. But this head torch is amazing because not only does it function like a regular head torch like this, right? But you'll notice there's an issue with this. If you're only listening, I've got a cap on and I've got my head torch above the cap, above the peak. So if you're pointing down, it's going to block.
You get blocked.
So what I end up doing is like putting my cap backwards at night. Because the reason I wear a cap is really a lot of the reason I wear a cap is because my hair just needs putting back,
to be looked
after,
and
staying back. Yeah. So this amazing head torch has solved the issue because it clips on to the peak of a cap. If I can just get this off.
How many lumens are we talking in this?
500 apparently. Like it's decent, but it's got like really, really shocking battery. Let me just try and turn it off. Oh, it goes red as well. I don't know how to turn it off, but anyway, if we just clip that on there, see that?
Crazy, yeah. How's it go though once you're actually like running, and have you field tested it?
Yeah. I used to use it all the time. It's great. It's really light. So it's a great torch. I'm just really chuffed that I've got it again. It will be my spare torch on my race because, well, frankly, the Petzl is better.
Yeah.
But I'm just very
Does your
glad I've got
Petzl
it.
go around the back of your head and have a like battery pack and everything?
Yeah. It's got a decent
Yeah.
battery pack. It's just wildly comfortable. And yeah, this just the battery life on this is really not very good
Yeah.
on the Nebo. But anyway, that was my show and tell. I was just very excited that this arrived in the post
The
today.
clip is all time.
Right? And the
Yeah.
amount, whenever I wore it, I used to wear it in content. If I was like filming a bit of content at night, I was running through the streets at night, I'd usually have this on the front.
That is a super real life niche problem I battle with.
Yeah.
Is how to orchestrate my head torch through the little hole at the back of my cap that I'm now wearing backwards and it not bouncing, and yeah, I feel it.
Yeah. Endless fiddling. But that's my show and tell. I hope...
Great. That you've come in strong. I've got two. I've got a digital one and a physical one.
Cool.
So Tommy gave me the brief of it can be an article or something that has come up, and I wanted to. I'll start with an article, and then I also got a new pair of shoes yesterday. But what I found super interesting was this article about Katie Schide and Germain. I probably got his name or pronunciation wrong. Germain Grangier. But the reason I found it interesting is because they have re-signed to On, and all the marketing and all the social around this was welcome home, welcome back. And for me, it's like I've had sponsors before and I work with brands a lot, and it's like usually it's like you work with a brand maybe for a few years if you're lucky, or you have this like tenure with them and then it's done. And I find it very interesting about an athlete returning back in terms of how long will they, like, what's going through their mind. It's like, okay, are they getting paid well? Is this like a really long-term thing now? Because you're just like, I left once, would I leave again? Personally, I find like these are both trail runners, and like I was in discussions with On a long time ago, but I was like, I just can't run with you because I don't like, there's no way I'm going to run trails in an On shoe. And their tech has like developed a lot, but the main thing I was interested about was the return. And that's what I wanted to discuss. It's like, say with you, it's like, would you return to a brand that you worked with or that had sponsored you? I'm not sure if you've been in that position.
It's a good question. Because I think from my perspective, it's from my position, I'm not a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So if a brand is getting involved with what I'm doing, it's because of some different type of influence. You know, a professional athlete has their influence because they are inspiring because of their performances, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the brands would get would kit them out and sort them out and sponsor them and allow them to continue. The reason I make a distinction is because for me anyway, at least my approach is that I want to work with brands that I, as an individual, would recommend. And so I don't think that's as much the case in sort of professional elite sport. You know, like
it is a good distinction. And
yeah,
I
because
think
like
there's a lot
I don't
of-
see myself as an athlete, right? Or as like a professional
Yeah.
athlete at all. So for me, like brand association is, I mean, that's me kind of recommending a brand. It's kind of a different thing, I guess.
It's also just an interesting topic as for, I guess, anybody listening, and how you like consciously like engage with a brand. It's like, okay, how do you take on information from an influencer? How do you take on information from an athlete? Which one is more credible? Because it's like, I have a lot of friends that are pro athletes, and it's just like, they're just going to be with that brand because it pays them well. and then an influencer also has to come up against that as well. It's like I know a lot of people, and I'm not immune to that. It's like I've taken jobs previously where I probably wouldn't recommend the product as my like first preference. I'll be like, it's good, but it's not my first preference. So it's just like, yeah, how do you?
Well, and also in running, like with Katie Schide, you're going to associate these athletes with almost a bit of a team in the sponsorship, right? So you've got the Nike people, and then you've got the On people and the Adidas athletes, and I think that's probably why they're using rhetoric like, I don't know actually exactly what they're using, but like welcome back or welcome home, because they really want those individuals, to the viewers, to the consumers of running coverage, they want those individuals to be strongly associated with those brands. And so when they weren't associated with those brands, they want everyone to feel like there was something off about that. Like if Josh Lynott was sponsored by Nike and he was winning all the events, and then suddenly you're an Adidas athlete, is there something in the collective psyche that's a bit off with that, or something that's changed? You know, does that actually sort of serve your original Nike sponsorship? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it just caught my attention. I'm just like, it was, that whole welcome back message. I was just like, great, well done. Everyone
loves to sort of flaunt a bit of a family message as well.
Yeah,
like we're,
the team thing would be cool. It's like I think Adidas Terex do that well. It's like the way they present as a team. I'm just like, I'd like to be a part of that family. I look at all the trail families, and like, the Adidas Terex team like looks like a good bunch of humans. Like the way they present, the way they hang out. So, but
what was your other show and tell?
New Balance, a New Balance 1080.
New Balance.
I think what's this one? The version 14 they're up to. But for me, it was like the New Balance 1080 with all my friends and I was just like, this was our shoe. Talking about home, this shoe felt like home. And then when New Balance, I think last year, put in like huge marketing spend into the version 13 that was really soft, I was like, this shoe is way too soft. Like you changed something that didn't need to be changed. And I put this one on and it feels firmer again. And I'm stoked because the 1080 is one of my favorite shoes, like so reliable for mileage. And it seems like they've firmed it up again. So that's my little bit of show and tell.
Do you prefer a firmer cushion?
I suppose so. Like not too firm, but I feel like when it starts really soft, you just like get a couple 100 Ks into the shoe and it feels like it's dead. Whereas for longevity in a shoe, I think when it starts firmer, it kind of lends to lasting a bit longer and holding up well. But if it starts too soft, it's just like kind of turns to rubbish, in my opinion. And also, I think it's probably not great for my body and my feet. I kind of prescribe to the idea of, or the notion of like your muscles and feet switching off if you're running in something too soft. And maybe it's just by chance that I've had like more niggles when I run with like super soft shoes. But I'm just like, my body's switching off. Like, get back to something more firm.
I agree with that, man. I mean, I've got a few pairs of soft shoes. Actually, some New Balance shoes here.
Yeah.
I've got. I always forget what they're called. But there's some trail shoes from New Balance. And apart from the fact they squeeze my foot in and they just don't feel that comfortable, the main issue I have with them, I like how they look. I wear them casually.
That's been my travel shoe at the moment. The New Balance Hierro.
Yeah, I think like there's definitely a gap in the market for good-looking trail shoes. And Yeah, I like how they look, but yeah, they're just too soft. And like you said, like I feel like I lose. Yeah, to use that big word again, I sort of lose proprioception, and like I don't feel like my muscles are working as they should be. Whereas the opposite end of that scale is like being barefoot. So to emulate a bit more of a responsive feel that provides more feedback underfoot, I do prefer the sort of more firm cushion. Even if you've got a decent amount of cushion, like it doesn't have to be a cloud.
No.
To talk negatively on.
Yeah.
Because their whole branding's around this cloud idea, and even when I see their adverts, to be honest, I'm like, no, I don't really necessarily believe that we should just be encouraging having clouds on our feet.
It's really circulating you at the moment, isn't it? This idea of soft.
Yeah. Oh man, it really is.
Because going back to on, I guess, yeah, they keep grabbing my attention too. But their whole campaign about soft wins. It's like in a soft shoe. Does it win? I'm not sure. There's a place for it, but I don't think it wins all out because you need a little bit of everything.
There's definitely a place for it. Yesterday, I was doing a recovery run. What shoes did I choose? I chose shoes that were really soft and had a massive offset because my calves were feeling tight and I wanted to just get some blood flow, easy running, something less impactful. Nice and soft, big offset, time and place for it. I'm not going to choose some barefoot shoes to go for a recovery run in. There's a time and place. I think that's like...
Definitely.
I mean, it's definitely a privilege to be able to have a rotation of some kind. But if you want to find a good kind of middle ground, I would say, don't go too soft. Because I just don't think your muscles are going to be getting used as much.
Just not a good long-term play. Well, we've kind of got through all the questions I already had.
That was good. No, I've got a couple of questions for you, Josh.
Great. Okay, awesome. I'll give it back to you.
I don't know exactly how to phrase this one, but I'm gonna say it.
We can
and
workshop
then give me a blank face if I should continue and clarify.
Got it.
Okay. What feels most important after 8 hours on the trails versus 8 hours on your Instagram feed?
Okay.
So,
because we chatted about this, I know where to take this.
Yeah.
My interpretation of it is after 8 hours on the trail, it's like, what do you value? For me, this question is all about what do you value after spending time on, lengthen time on trails or lengthen time on social media.
Let me ask it in a way that potentially makes even more sense. There's two of you.
Yep.
Person one, Josh 1, goes on an 8-hour trail hike walk and comes back. Person 2, or Josh 2, spends 8 hours looking at Instagram. After that, compare those two individuals' priorities, or what those two individuals think is most important.
Yeah.
After those two stints doing whatever they were doing.
I'll start with the social media. I think that's kind of like on top of mind at the moment because I've had a lot of like really long travel days, even on the plane, just jumping on Wi-Fi and just I feel like I've been scrolling a lot. Definitely I'm more prone to comparison when I've spent like 8 hours or 3 hours on social media. I feel more behind. I feel like I need to, like what I'm thinking about is like, what am I going to output next? I'm thinking about how I'm going to position myself on the internet. And then I go into these like thought processes of I just feel like I've wasted time. And so I think it's my priority after spending that is almost like, I need to cleanse myself in a way. Whereas I can even think of an example, like an 8 hour trail run. Went out in the Blue Mountains, explored, and just felt so much joy, so much gratitude. I was just like, wow, I've just like explored a part of my backyard, a part of Australia that's inspiring me. My body's so strong. So the different arcs of dialogue are tremendous. And then the priorities are then it's like, all right, how do I nourish myself with food, recovery? So I think 8 hours on the trails like lends me the like reductionist point of it is 8 hours on the trails like brings me to a more internalized focus, and 8 hours on Instagram is like takes me to a more external focus. And yeah, like everything, there's time and place for both, but I think the internal one is always far more nourishing. I don't know if that answers your question.
Certainly does, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no wrong or right. I think it's a good answer. I would say when I think about the two, because it's so obvious that one is better for you than the other. We're not trying to, it's nothing, we're not breaking new ground here, but
No.
I think it's like I think it's an interesting thought experiment just to sort of think about, and the reason I say 8 hours is because it's an extreme amount of time for either thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we quite often do spend 8 hours a day on social media, actually. If you look at some people's screen time, you're looking up upwards of 5, 6, sometimes 8 hours of social media time.
Easy.
So that was why I said 8 hours. I could have said 3, but I'm trying to sort of paint an extreme picture. And 8 hours on the trails is physically very demanding, no matter what you're doing. If you're walking the whole time, if you're on the trails for 8 hours, it's physically extremely demanding. 8 hours on social media is the opposite physically. And so I kind of think about it like that because I do often think that your psychological state follows your physiological state. I do think that it's very clear to us, of course, that psychologically Instagram and the content you watch can have a negative influence on you, can make you compare yourself to others, can do all of this stuff, can influence you in the wrong way, can make you think more negatively about yourself, all these things. That's fine. But actually, I think an interesting point is that physically, what are you doing when you're on Instagram? You're in a pretty compromised position, probably slouching, probably relaxed. It's unlikely you're engaging any part of your body. You're not actually exercising any sort of level of need to think for yourself. Even when you're not looking at Instagram, if you're cooking, for example, there are things going on in your brain that are good for you. You're exercising creative thinking or whatever it is, right? However you're cooking, or if you're following a recipe, you're having to think about these things yourself. Whereas when you're just passively receiving information, that in and of itself is physiologically, in terms of like the way the brain works, that is, I don't think, a helpful exercise for you. And it should be minimized as much as possible. So we compare the two. We compare 8 hours in the trails, really fighting to keep going, to manage your emotions and, all of these sorts of things. You're also getting all of the endorphins going and the blood flowing and all that good stuff that we know is great for you as an individual. You're out in the outdoors, you're getting all the, vitamin D you need. All of that stuff is helpful. But I think there's, the reason that the trails are specifically good in comparison to looking at Instagram is because of the physiological difference in what you're doing.
Yeah. But also just the different kinds of stress. I think positive stress is defined as eustress, EUSTRESS. And when you're trail running it, you have that positive stress of being like, I need to concentrate, I need to be switched on, I need to be present. Whereas when you're looking at your phone, you have this negative stress of you're concentrating, but that stress is then building from comparison, it's building from lack, and subconsciously when you're on the trails, you're reinforcing this message of, oh, I'm strong, I'm capable. And it's interesting how those like two different stresses expand.
Mm.
But I actually found it really interesting what you said then of your psychological state follows your physical state. At least with the people that I work with, I'm a big believer that your physical state follows your psychological state. And I think it's really interesting from like an injury perspective of how different injuries are linked to different psychological, I guess, stresses. And this is like, again, something I'm not trained in, not studied in, but I find it fascinating. And someone said it to me once when I had a calf injury. It's like, oh, your calf injury is emotionally linked to you feeling like you're not keeping up with the world. So how like different kind of emotional states, or if you feel like guilt or if you're feeling like a burden, how they might come out in, could be like chest pain or it might be something else, but how it's all kind of linked. And that's again where I think trail running is so powerful. Or if you like are engaging more positive psychological practices and then going on the trail, how much like better you perform as well.
I think we agree. I think that actually really there's less difference between psychological and physiological than we think there is. I think we like to separate them. That's where the problem lies. And so even in this conversation, we're separating them, but in my opinion, they're just the same thing. Like if you get into an ice bath, your mind changes. It's forced because your physiological state changes, your psychological state changes because they're the same thing.
Yeah.
That's the secret. And so what I'm really saying is that it is possible to disrupt your psychological patterns with something physiological. And I think that it's more accessible to people. It's more accessible for someone to drop down and do some push-ups and then reflect on what they're being sad about than it is for them to exercise some sort of psychological practice or some sort of mindfulness practice. I think that we can disrupt the negative patterns with something very practical and physical, and that isn't just that's not a David Goggins sort of neglect your emotions kind of perspective. It's very much, this is a practical piece of advice for you. Do something right now that changes your physiological state, and then you will be able to approach what you're struggling with more ease. If you
Definitely
are stressed about something that's happening behind the laptop, you're at work and some client has emailed with the wrong tone and it has just been, it's the last straw, close your laptop, go outside, go for a walk, change your physiological state by getting some vitamin D, by getting some sky time, by moving your body, come back, reapproach it. That's what I'm talking about.
I have a question that I think is a good segue from here that I've been quite curious about. I'm just going to word it as, what do you think about run streaks? Because that's what comes to mind first. I see them a lot. Or there's not a lot, but I see a handful of runners on the internet. I recently in Manila bumped into someone who was like, I've been running 900 days in a row. I was like, great. But on this discussion, what we're just talking about is like, there could actually be a place for it in terms of get out for a mile a day. Because this is like what a lot of run streaks are. It's like at least do 1 mile every single day. And in my training programs, I typically always have like 1 or 2 rest days a week. So like I just never have a streak. It's like maybe I'll have like 3 or 4 days in a row. I'll have movement or like sauna or something that would change my psychological state, but it's not always running. But I think what you're talking about is like a run streak could actually be positive for this like small psychological habitual change every day. But what comes up for you with run streaks? Like, how do you think about them?
Yeah, I mean, mixed. I'm mixed on run streaks because, and this is going to ruffle some feathers, I think, because some people are very precious about their streak. I personally believe, how do I phrase this? I believe that run streaks for the sake of the streak do more damage than good.
Yep.
However, I think that showing up on a daily basis is extremely beneficial. And if you are currently in a run streak and you're showing up in some way, you're adapting things so that you can show up, so that you can do these things, I think that's great. But what I do see is the run streak being more important than physical health, the run streak actually being quite a negative pull on self-worth. And when it gets to a point where you can't maintain this run streak, which, may I remind you, is complete bullshit anyway, you will feel like a failure. You will feel like, let's say you're on day 398 and you have a really bad injury that needs to just rest, or definitely doesn't allow you to break into a run. You got just you're 2 runs away from hitting this streak, 2 days. The bad decision would be to care about the streak. The good decision would be to give up on the streak because it doesn't matter and look after yourself. So there are scenarios where I think that a run streak can be damaging.
You don't think someone should just run through the injury for another 30 days and hope that it passes, and then they get to a 4:30 and they're all good?
No. No, I don't. I think that there are so many other options. If you want a streak that is just like including any sort of, maybe a streak would include a bit of yoga, or a streak could include some cycling or some swimming or all that, then fine. But running is not always the best option. And I just think the idea of a streak for the streak's sake, some people might be doing it for their own validation, of course. They're doing it for internal reasons. There's probably plenty of people listening right now who are doing a run streak. But I think as soon as it becomes more important than your actual mental health and physical health, and you're prioritizing it over things that are actually genuinely really important for longevity and performance and all that sort of stuff, then I think sack it off, man. Sack off the run streak. Stop obsessing over it. But
just to go...
being said...
Oh, you go?
Yeah, sorry, but all that being said, because I know what people are saying in their heads right now. All that being said, I think it's really valuable to show up and be disciplined and do this everyday practice. I think that's great. And I think if you're considering like a 1K run as part of your streak, then it counts, and that's great. And it's very unlikely you're going to be in scenarios where it's going to be damaging. But I just think that we maybe put too much praise on run streaks. Like, things happen and you're not always going to be able to maintain
Definitely. It. And then you kind of become a prisoner of the streak, right? And from like a negative side of things, you become a prisoner of the streak. And I think a lot of people start to form at least a small part of their identity around run streaks, which each to their own. We all identify with something, but I think there's more to it than that. But yeah, going back to your previous question of Instagram versus trails, after spending 8 hours on Instagram and not running for 3 days, I started to question my own discipline. I was like, maybe I could be a guy that does a run streak and that would make me run a little bit more. These are the kind of things that go into my head after being on Instagram, after spending 3 days island hopping and not running, and being like, wow, I'm kind of like not that disciplined with my running anymore, am I? Yeah. Whereas if I go out on the trail, I'm just like, I don't care about streaks. The streak is just like going at blue sky, fresh air, and spend more time in nature, and the numbers just dissolve.
It is just another metric that we can be too concerned about,
Yeah.
I think. Okay, I have one more question for you.
Awesome.
You don't know this one as well. I didn't give you this one.
No, this one I'm coming in fresh.
Yeah, because I was struggling with the phrasing of the last one, but this one, I think this is fine. Okay, you ready? Is movement a way to unlock the mind or escape it? Is movement a way to unlock the mind or escape it?
Both.
Please expand on your answer.
I have written poetry about the escapism of running and my observations with that. And again, what I've really tried to phrase running as is it's a practice, and I've kind of like adapted that or stolen that from yoga. And I love the way that people say like, I'm going to practice. I go to the mat, I see what comes up, and that's that. I observe what comes up in my mind and I acknowledge it and I let it pass. And I think that there are a lot of people, and you see it in running, there's a lot of like addictive personalities, which creates a lot of incredible results. But I think a lot of people are running from things, so you're escaping what comes up in your mind. But there's another side of running, which is what I think you and I both try and encourage people to engage, is like the mind opening side of running. And yeah, I really think it depends on when you like walk out the door, when you start your watch, whatever it is, it's like, what is your intention behind that run? And then with that, it's like sometimes you can be as well intentioned as you like, and you can't overrule what thoughts come into your mind. But I think again, with the right intention, it is a mind opening practice. And that's where, and I think it's almost this like spectrum. It's like people that are running with this like escapism mentality or approach, it's like getting them to be like, hey, rather than running away from something, it's like, what can you run towards? What can you like feel? How can you become more in tune with your body, in tune with nature, in tune with the path, in tune with the person you're running with? And that's when I think it becomes mind opening. But I used to laugh because when I was living in the Gold Coast in Australia, for like 2 years, it just seems like multiple times a week, I would find myself in discussions around ayahuasca. I've never done any kind of psychedelics, and everyone was just like, changed my life, like changed how I view the world. Anyway, one of my friends came and ran with my friend and I in the Blue Mountains. We dropped into the bottom of the valley. It like previously rained, amazing sunlight. All the trees were just like bright green. And she was like, oh, this is like being on ayahuasca. And I was just like, there it is. Like running can give you the high, the trip, the mind opening experience if you like put yourself out there. So, and again, I think mind opening can happen anywhere, but probably more likely to happen in nature. Just to bring it back to the theme of today's episode.
That's notable. It's so interesting, man, that you brought up psychedelics, because as you were speaking there about whether it's an unlock or whether it's an escape, I was thinking about a discussion I had with someone who was studying the effects of psychedelic therapy, psychedelic medicine and therapeutic practices to follow it and all that sort of stuff. This is back when I worked in the nascent medical cannabis space, and as you can imagine, many individuals who are in the medical cannabis space were also sort of interested in what the potentials for psychedelic therapy and all that stuff. So I chatted with all these sorts of people and interesting people at the time. And I remember this guy telling me that he believed the power of psychedelic therapy and psychedelic medicine in that context wasn't that the medicine itself could fix you, but it was that it could provide individuals who were trapped with a certain perspective the key to unlock a new perspective. And from there, with therapeutic assistance, they could then go on to actually solve the issues going on in their mind. Which I found really fascinating, because I was like, well...
I think you can substitute running into that.
Yeah.
Like literally...
Yeah. So
straight in and
I don't
out.
believe that running is the solution. In the same way that I don't believe a psychedelic medicine is the solution to depression, for example. But it can be a key to unlock a new perspective.
Definitely.
And it might start as escapism. And that's fine for me, because I fundamentally believe that it has the power to be the unlock to a new perspective and a new way of thinking and a new kind of approach to everything. So I think I agree. Is it a dissatisfactory answer to say both are true? I don't know.
No, I think it's great to explore both sides, and yeah, just generally, I wish more people could kind of sit in the grey. It's the world. The world doesn't like to sit in grey and acknowledge both sides, but I think there is both sides, and even just generally talking about running and where it is now with take training for major marathons as an example. I think a lot of people want to like go and do a major, tick it off, have a great time, and they're very like time focused. So it's a great part of running, but I think there's a lot more to unlock with it. And I think it's like same with escapism. You get someone who runs that way to become more like open-minded. It's people who run major marathons. I hope that they get to a point where they kind of like design their own adventures, their own experiential running, and yeah, they pick a race with a few friends that's in a, like maybe it's a small race in Madeira, for example, and it becomes more experience focused based on like what they love about life and running. But people enter running where they enter it, and that's fine, and it's the journey that I hope they go on that leads them to these things, if that makes sense. I didn't get that point across as well as I want, but I agree with you. It's like if you enter for times, if you enter running for as a place to escape, it's like great, you started, you're here.
Yeah. And two things can be true, two opposing things, seemingly opposing things, can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And as soon as I have discussions with people who can clearly recognize that, I have a little bit more respect for them, because I'm like, oh, you get it.
Yeah.
You get that two seemingly contradicting things can be true simultaneously.
Absolutely. And there are days where it's just like, again, could be the tone of an email, like you said, or just a day where my brain just feels broken from work or life or whatever stress has come up. You're like, I actually can't be bothered being intentional right now. It's like, I just want to go and run, probably push harder than prescribed, and just escape my brain for a bit. Sometimes I just use that as a tool.
Oh, 100%. So often.
It's like
so actually quite often quite often I'll go against my training plan, if you want to call it a plan. It's loose.
Yeah.
But I'll go against what I think is most appropriate for my training and go and just do what I want to, because I need it. And I'll say like, I need this one. Or even I'll say to Lou like, oh, I'm not running today. And then I'm putting on my shoes. She's like, what are you doing? I thought you weren't running. I'm like, I need to.
Well, I'd be like, Lou, it's not running. This is
actually therapy.
Yeah. I screenshotted your little story about the mountains being therapy. What was it? It was good.
What was that? Was that a reshare?
It was a reshare from Mammoth.
Yeah. I thought it was funny.
My therapist, tell me a couple of activities you enjoy doing. Me, climbing mountains. Therapist, I mean, when you're not climbing mountains. Oh, no, I don't like that.
No, I don't like
I don't know.
Well, Josh, it's been a pleasure. I hope that some of it's been notable. If you're a listener and you disagreed with a lot of it, then that's also great. That's what we're doing this for.
It's kind of the goal, right? Challenging conversations, thought-provoking.
We're trying to be
something
creative.
Slightly notable.
Trying to be creative. Trying to, play around with philosophy.
Maybe this segment's called Slightly Notable.
Occasionally notable. All right. I'll see you next time. Thanks, man.
Catch you, brother. See ya.